Hi, I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council, Place 5, and this evening is the first council meeting after the unprecedented, I'm getting really tired of saying unprecedented lately, historic freeze. And first and foremost, I want to give recognition and thanks to the entire City of Plano staff who corralled instantly when things went south. Literally, the Arctic front came south, and responded in tremendous fashion. The Emergency Operations Center was spun up. The city and the entire community rallied to provide for those in need. We're dealing with the aftermath now. It really just ended on Friday and Saturday as the water restrictions came to an end. And we're still assessing the damage in Plano and across Texas, but my wholehearted thanks to the City of Plano for its response last week. Tonight, we started out in the preliminary open meeting with the comprehensive monthly financial report. Our sales tax receipts were down only about 7.5% over this time last year, pre-pandemic. That's not bad at all. Our hotel tax, however, are down over 60% over this time last year, which is entirely predictable. And actually, it's still not as bad as I might have thought. Housing prices have gone up after a slight dip when the pandemic started. We had a North Texas Municipal Water District update. We are going to have our annual chlorine burn starting on March 1st, running through March 29th. What this process entails is removing ammonia from the disinfectant compound. Normally, they put chlorine in the water, and then after a filtration step, they add ammonia. Chlorine and ammonia bond together and create chloramine, which is the disinfectant that is in our water. For the month of March, they just stop adding ammonia. They put the chlorine in so it never turns to chloramine. This, of course, impacts people with chlorine sensitivities. The North Texas Municipal Water District publishes a list of things you can do if you have chlorine issues. This is not a long-term solution. Also, you'll notice opening up fire hydrants toward the summer months. This is to increase the flow through our water pipes, the main pipes through the city. So what happens is when things start heating up in Texas, which seemed impossible last week, that is a recipe for bacteria breeding in stagnant water. So to increase the rate of flow through the pipes, which makes it a lot harder for bacteria to breed, likewise makes it a lot harder for water to freeze, which we all learned last week, those who didn't already know. So it seems like a waste of water when you just see a fire hydrant spouting water out into the street. And it's certainly water that is never going to be used, but it's not quite a waste because the alternative is nastier water. So that is a step which we have to take right now, but there's hope on the horizon. We also got an update on BAF, biologically active filtration. It is currently active at the Tawakoni and the Bonham water treatment plants. By late 2024, they should have most of a conversion done at one of the 4 Wiley plants. So it's going to take a while longer to bring it to all the Wiley plants, pardon me, unfortunately. But this is a pretty big conversion. It's not simply an additional step, it's a pretty significant change in how the water is processed. Now, we already have the largest ozonation plant in the country in the North Texas Municipal Water District in Wiley, but we want to add biologically active filtration, which is just a better way of dealing with contaminants in the water. Basically, it works just like your stomach does. You take probiotics, those are the good bacteria that keep your stomach clean, and counters the bad bacteria. It's no different in our water supply. So we're hoping to have that done sooner rather than later, and of course that's something I will continue to look at and report on. There was a request for a firefighter tonight to receive an additional extension of full pay under workers' compensation. So this individual was injured in 2014 with a workers' comp claim, and he was granted full pay for a full year, and then that was extended, I believe, for another year. He came back to work for 3 years on light duty. After a few surgeries, he was unable to perform main duty as a firefighter anymore, unfortunately. And he came back to work for 3 years and then went back out last year, I believe, on what was a not entirely related workers' comp claim. And the city council granted him a year's worth of full pay again on leave. So the request was made tonight to extend that for an additional full year at 100% pay. This was denied, and Chief Greif felt as well that it wasn't merited in this circumstance. Now, while we all, including Chief Greif, empathize with the circumstances of this firefighter, he will continue to get full medical benefits and 70% of his pay under the workers' comp claim. The appeal was to receive that additional 30% for 100% continued pay for an additional full year. We then had a freeze update. So most everybody is attuned to this already, but the rolling outages that we were anticipating early on weren't rolling. Power just went out. In some places it came up several hours later. In some places it didn't come back up till several days later. Then it would come on for just a little bit and go out again if it came back on at all during those days. Nearly half of Plano homes were without power at some point, and at the peak, I should say. And that's a lot. That's way too much. Water stations in the North Texas Municipal Water District were in some places operating manually. Equipment was frozen when pipes started bursting. That resulted in uncontrolled flooding of houses, which pretty significantly increased water usage. We were seeing water usage there which resembled summer months, which includes watering lawns, refilling pools that evaporate in the heat, everything that entails. And at one point, the North Texas Municipal Water District was under threat of having power shut off to it, which would have been catastrophic for Plano if we couldn't get water serviced in time. And we were already under water restrictions because the ability to meet the demand, and it wasn't really demand, it was just a lot of uncontrolled flooding combined with demand, just wasn't there. So that was fortunately staved off. A lot of folks, including City Manager Israelson, lobbied Encore to make sure that that did not happen. We are going to have a special called session a little later this week to grant the city manager additional authority on a temporary basis related to this disaster. And a disaster was declared by Governor Abbott. To do things like waive the plumbing permit fee. We have plumbers in a boom now. They've got more work than they can handle. So there's normally a $65 plumbing permit fee. We can waive that to provide a little additional help to our residents. Dropping or dripping water credit of up to 2,000 gallons per house. So anybody who was able to do this in time had to leave their faucets dripping, like I gave notice about early on, to avoid the pipes freezing. Of course, a lot of pipes still froze, obviously. But for people who had to leave their water dripping, it's proposed to give a credit of up to 2,000 gallons. It sounds like a lot. It's only going to be about $8 per household, but that'll add up across the city. We're also able to give a credit back for lost water, so water usage from burst pipes, but take pictures. You got to document everything before it's all patched up, so you can apply for that credit. So look for that coming up in that special meeting in a few days. In the regular meeting, we gave recognition to Stephanie Mace and Lauriston Crockett, who were recently appointed to city boards and commissions. Stephanie was appointed to the Community Relations Commission, and Lauriston Crockett to the Parks and Recreation Planning Board. Congratulations to both, and thank you for serving. The mayor issued a statement on the arrest of a young man last week on Tuesday night during the freeze. Now, this has gone kind of viral, and most folks are aware of it. If you're not, I have been trying to write up my thoughts on it, and hopefully we'll have finished that and publish it tomorrow. The high note, the primary point the mayor struck in this statement, which I will release as well, the city statement, is about the trust we have in the community and making sure we strengthen that trust. He also noted that we have respect and trust in our police. And I want to note on a personal note that the Plano Police Department is the finest to be had. The city of Plano is rated annually as one of America's very safest cities. And that's in part because of our community, but in large part because of the tremendous and professional example set by our police department. We then moved on to, there were two items for individual consideration. One was the heritage tax exemption. So what this is it's an incentive for preservation of our heritage resources, historic structures. And it's to provide a little bit of a tax savings, which is anticipated to be used on maintenance of these structures. Now, a lot of the older houses and buildings, they don't make them like they used to. And so, as was noted in the meeting, you can't just pop over to Home Depot for replacement parts for some of these. And the older house gets, of course, the more in need of repair it is. So annual inspections are required in order to qualify for this tax savings. And $66,113 in property tax exemption were proposed across 87 different qualifying heritage resources in Plano. Now, there was one which had been denied and had appealed. This was a property which was purchased in late 2019. The previous owner had received a report, had not received the exemption since 2014, when several things were noted. It failed the inspection and said, you got to fix these things before we'll grant you this tax credit again. And it was never done. When the new owner bought the property in late 2019, she has been working pretty diligently to bring it up to speed and fix many issues with it, which would not have factored into, some of which factored into the heritage evaluation and the inspection, many of which didn't. So there were two outstanding items from the 2014 inspection, which had still been unaddressed, but the new property owner had addressed numerous issues, including one of the big ones, which was holes in the porch such that you couldn't even really safely use the front door. So we granted that appeal. So this homeowner was granted the exemption as well. We then moved into the discussion of the proposed low-income multifamily housing at K Avenue and Park. Now, back on, I think it was October 26th, Plano City Council voted to sell that land to the Plano Housing Authority for $2 million. It had come before us originally, proposed at around $900,000, and we said, well, have we even put this out for bid? And so we said, no, we're not going to sell for that. Let's put it out for bid, see what we can get. It came back at $200,000. Now, at the October 26th meeting, we were told that that was just to consider the sale of the land. And when it was put out for bid, it was said that we will sell to the highest bidder. I have since asked that we revise our approach because we should not and cannot decouple the sale of land from what it's intended to be used for in the city. We're not in the land arbitrage business. But it did sell, and I voted against it at the time because even though we were supposed to split the two considerations, I can't. They told us what they wanted to do with the land. They said this is why we're buying it. They are part and parcel considerations. So tonight they came back with the rezoning request to build this multifamily. So it was, I think, 286 units, if I recall correctly. I didn't make that note, but it's around there. 80% of it would be income controlled, meaning you have to qualify as low income in order to get that unit, which would be at a subsidized rate, taxpayer subsidized. I'll tell you how that works in a moment. And 20% of them would be at market rates. But here's how it worked. The land itself was sold to Plano Housing Authority. A developer is going to come build on it. However, Plano Housing Authority will own 100% of the land and the building, the improvements. This is because Plano Housing Authority, as a nonprofit, will be tax exempt from the property taxes. The developer will build the building and will operate and maintain the property. So they're going to be collecting the rents, but it will all be tax exempt. The developer is going to turn a profit from the construction and the management of the property, but no taxes will have to be paid on it because it is owned by the nonprofit entity of the Plano Housing Authority, which is not actually a city commission or anything. I have an issue with this. The developer is going to be making a profit on this. It's going to be tax exempt by virtue of the fact that it's actually deeded to the Plano Housing Authority. This strikes me as me buying a buffet for one person and then making a bunch of trips to the buffet to feed all my friends. That's probably the best analogy I can come up with. For that reason, I voted against this, but it did pass. So it's going to move forward. I would be very wary of plans like this because a lot was discussed about the need for affordable housing. And as I always say, I refuse to use the term affordable housing because it conflates two things. One is housing that is affordable, which I agree we have a need for. Two is taxpayer subsidized housing. So when we say we need affordable housing, well, who's going to argue with that? Who's going to say, no, we need more expensive housing? But what's usually discussed there is the prospect of actually taxpayer subsidized housing, which I have an inherent issue with. I think there have to be specific needs and requirements for that, not just that housing is generally expensive. Moreover, part of the value proposition was that it's being built adjacent to the DART rail. And if the idea is that there's not enough housing in Plano for the people who presumably work here, and so we need to provide affordable housing so that they can live and work here, that's eroded or almost obliterated by the notion of putting this next to the DART rail. If they're seeking a place to work that is next to the DART rail, a lot of it is going to be because they're going to use that DART rail to get to work, and it's not going to be in Plano. So, but like I said, it passed. It's going to move forward. But these are my thoughts on this kind of arrangement and on affordable housing in general. Look out for my statement on the arrest coming out soon, my thoughts on that. And look for the special called session to grant the city manager additional authority to waive some of the requirements for what would be routine, but in these circumstances after this freeze, it was catastrophic to a number of our residents. And the city didn't escape unscathed either. A number of city facilities were damaged, as were a few PISD schools. So I know this has really negatively impacted a lot of our residents. And I am also I've published a preliminary list of resources. So has the city now. I'm going to be consolidating all of that. So look wherever you can. There are a number of things you can do. If you are in immediate need of food or housing, some people's homes have been effectively demolished by uncontrolled flooding. If you are in immediate need of food or housing, contact the Red Cross. They are working to address this. So keep an eye out for all that information. I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council. God bless.